Welcome to Sports Talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Nick.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jackson.
Top-notch sports. Today we're going to be going over the Chicago Bears off-season salary review. Right here, you got Matt Nagy. Looking a little frustrated right here. Came in, was looking like a really good head coach. I was a fan of him when he came in. I know Mike was too. And then all of a sudden, I think that he tried to make Trubisky run a system that he wanted him to run rather than do what was around Trubisky's strengths. For example, play action passes, getting Trubisky outside the pocket, and all that fancy stuff. But Matt Nagy just wanted a pocket passer. He goes out and gets Nick Foles, and last season did not end the way that you guys wanted to. You were in the playoffs. That's nice, but it ended pretty quickly. So let's hop right into it, and let's look at your off-season salary review. Jackson, go ahead.
All right, the Chicago Bears team is negative $2.5 million in the hole. You can definitely get it out of that hole with the right cuts. These are the players currently under contract going into 2021. When we go over the notable losses slide, you'll see who they're losing in free agency. Green is you cut and you save. Red is you cut and you lose. So let's look at the defensive side of the ball. A couple years ago, this was a very, very elite defense. And honestly, some of the pieces from that defense that was super elite is still here. They definitely have the potential to still be elite. You look at Khalil Mack, he's an absolute fierce off the edge. Akeem Hicks isn't bad. He's taking up $10.5 million. You can cut him and you can get out of that hole. Kyle Fuller was a stud a couple years ago. Eddie Jackson was a solid safety. So they definitely still have the pieces on the defensive side of the ball to be a great defense. You go over to the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot of question marks. First, you look at Nick Foles. That's definitely not the guy you want going in, being your starting quarterback in 2021. So I have to see if they're going to draft a quarterback and they draft one early, draft one late. You'll see what we think in a couple slides. Look at this receivers core. Darnell Mooney was a steal in the draft this year, so he's their guy. And they're losing Allen Robinson in the free agency, point that out. But Javon Wims and Anthony Miller probably won't get the job done for you guys. They got Cole Kmet at tight end. Young, we'll have to see what he can do in the future. This offensive line against mediocre. Their tackles ain't bad. James Daniel, left guard, isn't bad. And then you probably want to address more of this interior offensive line. And then David Montgomery at running back really stepped it up towards the back end of the season. We'll have to see what this team does in free agency. They are $2.5 million in the hole. Definitely can get out of it. We'll have to see what they do. Nick, over to you.
I personally think you guys start questioning Matt Nagy. And Bears fans, I want to know what you guys think about Matt Nagy. This team was a playoff contender. They're looking good. I know Mitch Trubisky never really panned out, but I'm honestly still kind of a fan of Mitch Trubisky. I think that Matt Nagy started going away from what worked with Mitch Trubisky. When you look at this team here, right, the defensive side of the ball is still pretty decent. I mean, you got Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman coming in the inside. You got Khalil Mack coming off the outside. Robert Quinn sometimes coming off the outside. You got Danny Trevathan and Raquan Smith. This kid's pretty solid too. Eddie Jackson at safety. You got to establish one safety right here because Jordan Lucas is not going to be your guy. At least I don't believe so. Jalen Johnson, I like this kid out of last year's draft. He's a nice cornerback piece. And you got Kyle Fuller on this side. This defense is solid. The offense is a question marks, right? The offensive line's not solid, like Jackson pointed out. You got to do some things here to try to booster up this offensive line. You got your tight end and Cole Kmet. I think he's a pretty good tight end. I think that will be a nice future piece for this team. And then you got your receivers, right? Darnell Mooney was a nice pick this year. You got Anthony Miller on the outside. Again, you want to probably boost up that wide receiving core. These are the guys that are currently under contract, like Jackson said before. And then you got David Montgomery, who picked it up towards the back tail of the season this year. We'll have to wait and see. I think that personally, you got to rock it out this year and see what happens. And then you got to really start questioning Matt Nagy, depending on how this season goes. So let's go to the next slide where we're going to show you guys your notable losses, the guys that currently are not under contract. Mike, go ahead.
All right, so looking here at the notable losses, but first I got to give a huge shout out to our numbers guy, Noah the Torpedo Thompson. Without him, we wouldn't be able to get this done. He comes in clutch for us all the time. Thank you, Noah. Now let's start off with these notable losses. First, we got an important piece. Wide receiver Allen Robinson, his expected contract is a 4-year, $80 million deal, and he played 85.1% of snaps. A huge part of this offense this year. Without him, I don't know where this team's going to be. Quarterback Mitch Trubisky, who really stepped up in the second half of the season. His expected contract is a 2-year, $16.6 million deal. He played 53.2% of the snaps. Then we got safety Tayshaun Gibson. He's expected a 1-year, $1.5 million deal, and he played 92.1% of the snaps. We got guard Jermaine. I don't know how to say it. Nick, you know Nick?
Ifedi.
Ifedi. He is expected a 1-year, $1.2 million deal, and he played an impressive 99.5% of the snaps. Then we got Alex Barr's guard. His expected contract is a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. He played 53% of the snaps. And they're going to lose punter Pat O'Donnell. He's expected a 2-year, $3.4 million deal, and he played 27.7% of snaps. And we got Barkevius Mingo, edge. He's expected a 1-year, $1.2 million deal, and he played 36.4% of the snaps. So the Bears are losing a big number of guys here. Losing Allen Robinson hurts, and then to think how crazy is it the NFL these days? A quarterback that you trade up to go get, you give up a lot to go get him. Mitch Trubisky will no longer be a Chicago Bear.
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy, but let's start with this. First things first, usually Mike mentioned the percent of snaps played. You typically want to bring back the guys that play a high percent of the snaps. These guys are familiar with the system. They have chemistry, continuity with the other guys around them. So you want to target the guys that play a high percent of the snaps. So let's go to the next slide where we're going to break down what we think you guys are going to do this offseason. Not too fun, fellas. I'm going to be honest with you. Potential targets. You guys get $2.5 million. That's a negative $2.5 million estimated cap space. That's why it's in red. Look, here's the situation. We're not as estimated any cuts because you go back to this slide. You didn't cut Hakeem Hicks, maybe. I mean, you would save $10.5 million. That would put you at around $8 million positively. $8 million is not going to get you anywhere. So unless you cut like Hakeem Hicks, maybe Bobby Massey, maybe Charles Leno, maybe Kyle Fuller, you're not going to really get out of this negative cap space. I would want to keep these main guys here. I would want to keep Hicks here around again. I want to keep Massey here, Leno. I would want to keep these guys here again for another season, because what's the sense of getting rid of all your key players? If you get rid of them, you're not going to win games. If you keep them, you have an opportunity to win games. If you were to cut Hicks, Massey, let's just say you cut those two for like no apparent reason, right? It would save you $16 million. Minus that, you'd be at $14 million. You can bring in maybe one key player. It's not enough. It's not enough to win this team game. So estimating signings is none. You got negative 2.5. We're going to say none. All right, here's your team needs. You need a quarterback, an outside linebacker, middle linebacker, strong safety, wide receiver, center, right guard, and cornerback, right? Again, you're going to have to nail this draft, and I think that you guys can, and I think this is a nice platform for you guys to be able to do it. First round, you guys draft right guard Elijah Vera Tucker. This guy could fall right to 20, plug him in, play him right away. He's the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. Again, we're going to be doing our scouting analysis in a few weeks, so be sure to stay tuned and leave a like, subscribe for that. Next thing you're going to look at in the second round, we got you guys drafting Hobson to Cyrilla Dean. This guy is a freak. He plays a weak side linebacker position. He plays strong safety. He's 6'4", 200-something pounds. This guy is an animal. He can fly all around the field from Florida State. I'm a big fan of this guy. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. Kind of like a Jeremy Chin / Isaiah Simmons. One of those type players where they can do a little bit of everything. They can cover as a linebacker. They can cover as a safety, come up, make the big hits. I'm a fan of this kid. And last but not least, wide receiver Sage Serrat. This guy, I think that he's a pretty good receiver. A little bit bigger for you guys to throw the ball to. I'm a fan of him. I think this would be a really nice third round draft pick for you guys in this year's draft. So let's go to the next slide where we're going to break down our 2021 expected starters. Jackson, go ahead.
All right, you're still negative $2.5 million because we had no cuts. Going to the offensive side of the ball, remember, this blue colors guys you drafted, and this yellow is the placeholders going into 2021. So we look at Nick Foles. We're gonna roll with Nick Foles, see what he can do. Maybe get a QB in next year's draft. So we're gonna roll with Nick Foles and see what happens there. Sage Serrat bulks up that wide receiver core. It's a solid pick in the middle rounds. Bulker up this offensive line, drafting Vera Tucker at the play right guard for you guys. You still maybe want to address the center in the draft as well later, towards the later end of the draft. And then Anthony Miller, again, maybe you want to grab another receiver in the later rounds. Go to the defensive side of the ball. Want to address this linebacker core possibly in the draft. Again, you might want to draft the also a defensive edge for LaCale London, excuse me. And then Homicide to Cyrilla Dean, like Nick said, this band is an absolute unit. He can play everywhere. He's like Isaiah Simmons, Jeremy Chin, like you said. So it's a very, very solid pick to bulker up the secondary and this defense in general. Again, like this team was 8-8. They made a playoff run. They got there. Unfortunately, they lost in the first round. We'll have to see what happens again. Matt Nagy's job could possibly on the line. He's on the hot seat. So I have to wait and see what happens. They're going to have to nail the draft, like you said, Nick. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yep, Mike, what do you think?
Well, I think a lot of eyeballs are looking at Matt Nagy. But truly, I'm going to tell you, I was kind of proud of Matt Nagy this year because a lot of coaches wouldn't do what he did. Matt Nagy, as Bears fans know, he's the play caller, and he gave up play calling. So that's a lot of guys won't do that for a pride thing. He did that for the better of the team. I respect that decision from him. I'm hoping this Bears team has a bounce back year. Sage Serrat is a bigger receiver, 6'3". He's coming in. No one's coming in to replace Allen Robinson, but he's kind of Allen Robinson-like size-wise. So they're bringing a bigger receiver back in. Barrett Tucker is going to come in and make an immediate impact for David Montgomery because David Montgomery looked like he was a breakout star this year for the Bears, helped them win a lot of football games. And I love Cyrilla Dean. Guy is an animal, hits like a truck, can do a little bit of everything, can play in the box, can play safety. Big fan of him. Nick Foles, we've seen Nick Foles several times catch fire. If Nick Foles catches fire, he plays close to perfect football. I'm excited to see what Cole Kmet does this year, too. He's my number one tight end coming out of last year's draft. I think a huge breakout year for Cole Kmet is coming. And if Anthony Miller, look at Anthony Miller. He is an important player for this 2021 Bears team. If he stays healthy and stays on the field, we have seen the ability to make plays. He just needs to stay on the field. And with this defense, the Bears can make a run. I'm not saying anything ridiculous like they're a great team in the NFC, but when you have a good defense, you are always in it.
I agree. I absolutely agree with Mike's statements there. I mean, this defense can single-handedly carry you through a lot. You got Matt coming off the edge, Keem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Robert Quinn, Raquan Smith, Hobson to Cyrilla Dean. This defense has only gotten better with Hobson to Cyrilla Dean. You bring in, you got someone like Jalen Johnson last year. These two are nice young pieces on this defense. This offense, Sage Sharat, Mike made a great comparison. He is like Allen Robinson. I think Allen Robinson is a top 5 wide receiver talent-wise in the NFL, so we're not comparing him like that. But body, physically-wise, they're both 6'3". I'm pretty sure Robinson's 209. I think Serrat might be like 215-ish. Nick Foles, this guy just needs to get it done. He just got to try to get it done. Again, it's tough. Matt Nagy's in a tough situation. How much can you really expect from this guy? I expect to see some kind of improvement. I know you're losing a lot of pieces. You go back up here, you're losing Robinson, you're losing Trubisky. But what though? He wanted to move on from Trubisky, it seems like. So now we'll have to wait and see what he does without Trubisky. Guys, I think that's all. I'm hoping for the best for you Chicago Bears fans. I'm wishing you guys the best of luck. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, let us know what you guys would do this upcoming offseason. I'm Nick.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jackson.
From Top Notch Sports. We'll see you guys soon. Peace. We are.
Feel better.
See you guys soon. Peace.